Hi everyone, Andrew Van Leeuwen from Speed Cafe here. We're on the Gold Coast. We're starting the weekend on the podium for the Boost Mobile Gold Coast 500. I'm joined by my colleague Stefan Bartholomaeus, and this preview video is brought to you by the Ford F-150. Go big with the F-150. Stefan, how are you feeling being on the Gold Coast?
Pretty warm at the moment. The sun's beating down on us, but there's a few showers there on the forecast for the weekend, so we'll see what's in store.
It does get pretty spicy when it rains around this joint. Now, the big story heading into the weekend is actually nothing to do with the racing itself, I suppose. It's the fact that we know now that Mark Winterbottom won't be on the grid full-time next year. It's not quite a full stop on his full-time career. I actually touched base with Mark to clarify that he is open to continuing full-time in the future at some point, but for now he won't be on the grid next year. Stefan, is this a bit of a surprise to you? Because I kind of felt like a lifeline was going to come somewhere for Mark, and yet now we have this announcement that he is definitely out of the running for a full-time seat next year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and even in the announcement this morning, Frosty really referenced still having that fire in the belly and basically still wanting to do it full-time, which means it's really difficult for him that he's having to step back into what we expect will be a co-driver role. So, yeah, we did think he was going to stitch something together, but geez, he'd be the number one draft pick for Bathurst, wouldn't he?
Absolutely, and what do we think it means in terms of, I guess, he was closest linked to Brad Jones Racing. Do we think we will see the stability that Brad Jones has been talking about at that lineup now?
Well, Brad has said all along that he expects no change, but you never know in this business. It's still October. There's a little bit probably to play out in the silly season yet, but also that co-driver market, it's really ramping up at this point.
Let's have a chat about what we expect to see on the streets of Surfers Paradise this weekend. Obviously, we're in an interesting spot with the championship battle. Will Brown can wrap it up this weekend, but he would need a fair bit to go his way. Really, I guess we need to wait and see whether Brock Feeney and Chaz Mostert can step it up, go out there and get the wins they need to try and close the gap enough for it to be something of an exciting finale heading to Adelaide.
In a way, yes, but I mean, Will's really going to have to trip over probably twice at some point in these next four races for the other guys to have a chance. It's hard to see them really winning it on merit. Will just has to really have a solid weekend this weekend to set himself up for Adelaide, but gee, it's a tough track to just go in with that mindset. Like, they've got to attack this place so hard, attack the curbs. There's so many risks here. Even a curb strike in a shootout puts you 10th on the grid for the race, and then the turn 1-2 is so tight here, anything can happen. So yeah, not over yet, but certainly Will is looking like he's in a pretty good position.
Any thoughts on where the form might actually lie this weekend? It's hard to tell for me because last year when we came here, we had those parity changes happening on the fly. The Mustang was definitely the car to have at that point in the season. We saw Cam Waters and David Reynolds win the races here. Any idea on what the car to have will be this weekend? Who's going to go out there and do the business, or is it wide open?
It does feel pretty wide open. Like, obviously Sandown and Bathurst, big long straights. It felt like the Camaro had a decent advantage there, but if you look at the form back to, say, Townsville, another street track, the Mustangs were the car to have. So yes, at the end of last year, the Fords did seem to have an F1 style aero package. They had a little bit more going for them, but yeah, who knows this weekend.
Another interesting change that is in the works for this weekend. As we record this, it hasn't quite been signed off, but Motorsport Australia is actually looking to try and differentiate between curb hops, as in trying to take the chicane but using too much curb, and actually cutting chicane, which is driving straight through. We see that a lot at the start of the race where guys on the outside come into 110 to straight line. We saw it at the end of the race last year, the Sunday race last year, where David Reynolds really used straight line the chicane to keep Brody Kostecki behind him. He was able to do that under those rules because it counted as a curb strike and you had an allowance of those. The plan is to change the rules so those cutting the chicane is taken out of the allowance and incurs an immediate time penalty. That could make things pretty interesting if that change does get across the line, Steph.
Yeah, I think it's something that they have to do. This curb hop scenario is just always a rolling brawl around here. It dominates the early sessions, and we saw a lot of penalties, time penalties in the races last year. So that's something that they play around with the electronic sensors, the tyre bundles, curb heights, but it's just always a drama one way or another. But they really have to step in and stop what we saw with David Reynolds last year. Even though it was an awesome story to see him get the win, I think everyone was happy for him in that regard. But just clearly cutting a chicane, especially on the last lap, it just didn't feel right. It didn't sit like that was, it's just not cricket. So I think, yeah, if they can clean that up, that'll at least be a step forward.
Well, it's always an interesting weekend here on the Gold Coast. Make sure you stay tuned to Speed Cafe for all the big breaking news, race reports and race reaction. And we'll also have live updates thanks to Mobile One. So follow along to it all.
America's favourite truck is here. The Ford F-150. Go big.